The sequel trilogy introduced us to the concept of our first Force dyad in Star Wars canon. This essentially means that Rey and Ben Solo are two separate individuals, but they share a bond that makes them one singular entity, which grants them a rare ability to interact with each other across space and time. There's a good chance that the Force created this dyad in order to restore balance, combining the strength of two tremendously powerful individuals and making them one in order to combat the return of Darth Sidious. This concept opens the door to a world of questions about the Force and about these characters, and in this video I will be addressing one that was actually brought to my attention by one of the viewers of this channel, and delving deeper into their analysis. So the question is this: why did Kylo Ren fall to the dark side, but Rey did not? More specifically, why was Rey so strongly committed to the light, while it seemed like everything in the galaxy was pulling Ben Solo toward the dark? It doesn't really make sense to say that this was created in order to maintain balance, one of them being light and one of them being dark, if the purpose behind the dyad was to defeat Palpatine. So I'm not here to tell you that this theory I am about to present is the truth. After all, it is just a theory. But it is, however, an intriguing concept that I think a lot of people will find very interesting, so here it goes. The Rise of Skywalker novel has revealed that Rey and Ben had felt each other's presence for years before they ever met. It's likely that the bond was established upon Rey's birth and continued to strengthen very slowly until the two characters finally met in The Force Awakens, at which point the development was greatly accelerated. So considering that Rey and Ben Solo are two halves of the same whole, allowing them to feel each other's emotions, is it possible that the reason Ben fell to the darkness while Rey was able to easily remain in the light despite her dark heritage was because Ben was taking on Rey's inner turmoil, either intentionally or without even knowing he was doing it? I know this might sound crazy at first, but hear me out. Ben is about 10 years older than Rey, and began his Jedi training around the time Rey was born, which would mean that by that point he had a much better grasp over his emotions, and that he had already been given a chance to establish some sort of moral code within himself by the time Rey came along. It's quite interesting that Han and Leia felt that sending Ben away to train with Luke was their only choice, only once Rey was born. Yes, he surely had already displayed some dark tendencies beforehand, as was to be expected with the grandson of Darth Vader. But it is only once Rey comes along that his parents feel the darkness within Ben is too great for them to handle. Then fast forward 5 years or so when Rey is sold off by her parents to protect her from the Emperor, and it's at this point that Ben's dark tendencies reach a whole new level, which now became alarming even for Luke Skywalker. I think it's a very interesting possibility that Ben Solo had been subconsciously absorbing Rey's dark feelings and the burdens she faced throughout her terrible childhood, leaving her with only feelings of compassion and hope. This upbringing that should have left her hopeless and angry at the galaxy instead molded her into a loving woman who saw light even in the darkest of people. The dyad between them was meant to be held between two balanced individuals who remained in the light, but could use the dark side when necessary. And this is indeed what eventually happened at the end of Episode 9, when they both fulfill their destiny as a true dyad, fighting for the same cause. But things didn't go as planned along the way due to the imbalance of power that happened between them. And this leads us to another question. It seems that a dyad only operates at full power when both individuals are fighting for the same cause, working in unison, on the same page as one another at all times. So why, if the Force created this bond, did it allow Ben Solo to be seduced by the Emperor? The fact of the matter is that the Force is not necessarily in complete control of every step of an individual's journey. Rather, it puts all the right pieces into motion, recognizing that there are many avenues that can be taken before eventually reaching the end goal. So the rise of Kylo Ren did not hurt the Force's goal to re-establish balance through him. At the end of the day, the Force does not necessarily care how long it takes for balance to be achieved, or what processes take place in order to reach the final destination. It simply wants to be balanced, regardless of what the road to get there looks like. So most of the light tendencies went to Rey, leaving Ben to carry the darkness. Upon their meeting in The Force Awakens, however, things begin to change. The small inklings of love and compassion that are buried inside Kylo are reawakened, and the darkness in Rey begins to rise as well. And over the course of these 3 movies, we see both individuals begin to move closer and closer toward the balance they were always meant to carry. The more they get to know one another, the more they come to understand their bond and pick up on each other's feelings, until by the end of the trilogy, they become what they were always meant to be. A true dyad in the Force. A combination of two balanced Force users who, as one, have mastered the light and the dark and use that power for good. Notice how once Kylo Ren is destroyed and Ben Solo returns to the light, Rey immediately begins to experience her darkest moments, as she is now carrying her half of the darkness. As Kylo Ren begins to fade and Ben Solo takes his place, Rey loses control and stabs Ben through the stomach. She then heals him and flees to Ahch-To, where she intends to stay forever. This sequence is showing Rey in a very vulnerable state, as she is not sure how to handle this darkness that has been growing within her ever since meeting Ben Solo. Again, as the light in him began to rise at the beginning of this trilogy, so too did the darkness in her. Then when Rey goes to Exegol, the Rise of Skywalker novel tells us that Rey truly was going to fall to the dark side before she sensed Ben coming to help her. As Palpatine manipulates her and tells her to strike him down, Rey considers what it would be like and finally decides that being Empress might not be so bad after all. So when she nodded her head in agreement as we saw in the movie, that was not intended to be a trick. She really was going to kill him, and he really would have taken over her body. And this really shows us just how conflicted Rey had become. But Ben's return to the light and his arrival on Exegol sort of snapped her out of it, and then when they finally join each other, the dyad is fulfilled. They finally become what they should have been all along. But anyways, what are your guys' thoughts on this theory? Again, I'm not necessarily saying that this is for sure what happened, but the more I thought about it and the deeper I got into this, the more plausible it became for me. And if this is indeed what happened, I think it's an awesome concept that I hope we will learn more about in the future. Anyhow, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, please drop it a like to support the channel, subscribe for future Star Wars content, and may the Force be with you always.